you know, how we was taught, you got to stick through and just keep going. I learned a lot of things about that as far as character. It made me a better person. But at that moment, I still was battling within myself because my mom, she talked to me, but you know, it's good to have a male figure there that has your best interests. And I think as I got older, my wife and dad been there to support me and taught me about the Bible and all that stuff and kind of get me on the born arrow as far as understanding the word of God. And I think once I started getting into the Bible and started learning things, it changed my life tremendously. And I thank God for that. So, you know, coming from the inner city and one man now, I'm just truly blessed. But if I never had someone that the spiritual side of things, I would have never got to a point of the growth level that I'm at now. So I'm appreciative for all the people that was in my life, male wise, and I'm really blessed in it. But I think if I had to go out back when it started, my trauma was abandonment, and I found the reason because sometimes when you abandonment, that you can this stuff can carry over into like manifestation things in your life, and you still going through the same patterns.
Mm.
So through that process, I learned that, and when I met, you know, my wife Dan, and he was, you know, giving me scriptures to read, I started to identify my purpose, and I started to understand, you know, what I really supposed to be doing out here. And it wasn't basketball. Basketball was a tool for me, and it just full circle for me. So I just thank God for the people in my life, and I think they really helped me to where I'm at now. But it was a long battle because I didn't understand why I was getting the same results until I started getting into the word. So
Well, what I
it was
see from a lot of people from the professional aspect of it, and just dealing with the sheer number of people I deal with on a daily basis, is the vicarious trauma that we don't deal with, right? We're taking on in our jobs a lot of stress, especially in my job. People are bringing their problems to me. But most time, men are trying to solve these problems for their mother, for their brother, for their
Mm.
friend, for their wife, not realizing that they're taking on this stress in their desire to handle this problem. And that then is creating trauma within their own life, stress within their own life, impacting how they deal with other things, making them want to isolate, making them have to figure out some kind of way to deal with it. It's something that's overlooked. A lot of times we go through and we say, well, I wasn't exactly abused, or I didn't actually experience any trauma myself, but you saw your mother be abused. You worked with your client through whatever that stressful situation was, and you are, in fact, impacted by that, and that sometimes is overlooked. You can't always be empathetic with someone if you don't know that they actually experienced something. But me standing with you, standing in the gap with you, walking through the trenches with you is just as impactful and just as stressful. So, what I see on my end is a big mental health aspect that gets overlooked and needs to be dealt with is the vicarious trauma that
Mm.
men often deal with just as we traverse through the day and through life.
that's a great point because this stuff you can put so much weight on your shoulders trying to do that. So like you said, I think this is very important. I like how you broke that down as well. My bad for interrupting, but I get it.
Mhm.
So, again, I want to stop because y'all have said some good stuff. Let's go back. I love what Coach Cloud was saying about the abandonment, but I definitely want to go to vicarious trauma from even a bigger perspective. When we're talking about vicarious trauma, I don't assume. So let me tell y'all what that is. That's vicarious trauma or secondary traumatic stress is what we like to say in counseling. It can happen to individuals who are continually exposed to trauma through the first hand account of others, right? Just like what James was saying, I'm carrying this because I'm close to you, right? Or I'm carrying this because I'm trying to help you. And it's stressing me the heck out, right? I'm overwhelmed. I can't breathe. And even from the perspective of the Black man in society, think about what we're talking about today. We're talking about secondhand trauma, secondhand experiences, whether we witnessed it or whether we're helping somebody carry it. But then think about the world that we live in or that you all live in as Black men, right? So
Mhm.
not only
Mhm.
are you getting it from the perspective of individuals that you know that are common to you, that you walk close with as well, but think about that from the perspective of a broken system
Mhm.
Mm.
generationally, right? So
Mhm.
when we think about trauma, and of course I'm not trying to go there because that's maybe a different a different discussion for another day. But when we hold stuff, because we're talking about mental health, when you hold stuff like that, for those that didn't know what vicarious trauma was, and now you know because we just told you, it will manifest in different ways, and it can manifest in your body, it can manifest mentally. So if you see where you've been struggling with something or trying to help someone or assist someone, and you haven't taken that break or cut them, so sometimes you got to love from afar and release people and cut them off, then part of your mental health being hindered could be because of the effects now that you're feeling from a manifestation of the trauma that you
Mhm.
carry. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So you
Mhm.
got migraines now, or you can't figure out, your nervous system is all over the place, right? Because that's also a part of us dealing with trauma. And everybody at some point in their life, we know, have experienced trauma, but we know depending on how you're built, it's going to affect us in different ways. Me and K Scott can see the same thing and hear the same thing, and I will recover well, and he might be a wreck, right? Just because of how his body is geared. So I definitely want to talk a little bit about the vicarious trauma, because that is a lot of what our Black men are walking in still yet in 2025, when you're dealing with the
Mhm.
stigmas, and the stereotypes, things like that. How can we overcome? How can a Black man overcome that, the vicarious trauma? What is it that what needs to be done? I don't even know if there's a right question to even address that,
I
right?
don't I don't think there's any one thing that needs to be done, but you've got to learn how to set boundaries for yourself.
Mm.
That's definitely important. I mean, it took me years to set some very serious boundaries that needed to be set, to know that they needed to be in place. And you do have to speak on it. You do have to release it. You can't let that in. I had a situation. I was talking to a young guy, young pastor, had been a pastor since I think he said was 16. He was in his 20s. He's carrying the weight of trying to be a pastor and what he thinks that looks like, right?
Yes.
And what that stress is putting on him as he's also taking care of people in his family. And he was in a situation and he was just kind of getting out of control. And people asked me to go talk to him. I just simply asked the guy, "Can I touch you?" He said yes. So I gave him a hug and an embrace, and he just
Mm.
broke down in tears. Must have cried for at least 3, 4 minutes.
Wow.
Just said he had never had an opportunity to have that release. He had never had an opportunity to hug another man, to be open with another man, to know that it was okay to release that stress that he's been bringing on from his congregation, from his grandmother, from what he feels the role is supposed to be as a pastor, and trying to navigate through that from 16 to 27 in
Mm.
those years that he was doing that. So you've got to make some releases there, got to be willing to open up about it, talk about it, and you still have to set some boundaries.
Yes.
Yes. I love that.
16 to 27. That's 11 years, 12 years, right?
He's been preaching for a while,
I
but he's
mean,
still young.
and the very young, 27 is not old, and 16 is a baby, and so that is a lot of weight to take on. And I've mentored quite a few young men in my career, and I have seen that happen before. I've seen a young man break down in the arms of an elder, and because he just didn't know how to deal with it,
Mhm.
and just let go. The young man I'm thinking of in particular, his grandma passed away, and she was basically his rock. She was his guardian, she was his everything, and she passed away. So his family came, stepped in, still took care of him, but he didn't understand how to process his grief, right?
Mhm.
So he literally had an episode, and we had a kind of an intervention of sorts. And the gentleman who was in the room, who was the elder of us, and who's like one of the leaders in our organization, man, he spoke to so much life into that young man. It was just changed his whole life, you know. And one of the books I gave to him and to several young men in that program that I was working in was Boundaries. That's by Henry Cloud, John Townsend. That's right. Yeah, Henry Cloud, John Townsend. It's an amazing book, and it's so like specifically focused on helping you understand how to say no, when to say yes, and you're responsible to people, but you're not responsible for people all the time,
Mhm.
right? Like, yes, I want to care for your feelings and let you know I love you, I support you, and I am not going to necessarily take your problems from you, because some problems they need to keep, and some problems they need to mature through and walk through and take care of themselves, right? He mentioned I actually got a chance to see Dr. Cloud speak one day and meet him, and he had told a story about a young man. His parents came to him and saying, "Hey, our son has this problem. You know, we're trying to get him to get a job. Da 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 blah blah." And he said, "Your son doesn't have a problem." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" No, no, no. Your son doesn't have a problem. No, you have a problem. And the reason why you have a problem is because you're not allowing him to suffer the consequences of his actions. And so you're the one taking on the consequences he should be bearing, and that's why you're stressed out. He's over in the room chilling, and you're over here stressed out. And so they learned from that and went from there to how to be responsible to their son, but not responsible for their son. And that applies to any man who's taking on, whether it's his wife, his mother, his grandmother, whoever, his children. Yes, there's some things you need to be responsible for as a man, but you can't take everybody's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take a pause because, please forgive me for those that are watching live. I see some comments and I want to come back. We're going to continue this because I want to come from where y'all are just talking about, even what James shared about the hug, how it just, it just had him break down because he had never experienced that. I want to talk about the intersection of Black men and mental health in the communities that we come from. So we're going to kind of dabble into that a little bit, but I want to comment. Somebody's watching on YouTube, and I just happened to pull up because I was trying to do too much. Y'all forgive me. But talking about the isolation part that was mentioned when you were talking, K. Scott, he stated isolation made him feel like social IQ, like it feels weird to talk to others about what he's been through, right? So that's where the isolation part is coming for him. So I just wanted to share what he shared about that. And basically he was just saying he doesn't really have a routine, but he did mention going for walks. That's a good thing, taking a stress break, taking a walk. He's an animal person, so that might be part of his self-care, taking that time to spend with his fur babies, that kind of thing. So definitely, young man, those are good stress relievers. And if you need more, please let us know, because we have men here that are on this call today that would love to connect with you and walk with you. That's why we're having this conversation. Back to this vicarious trauma and what we're dealing with in the state of our Black men and mental health. I do want to touch on the intersection of community, because I heard James say, I just asked the young man, could I hug him? And he broke, because I've never, ever, had that before. So what happens? What happens at the intersection of mental health and Black men in the Black community? Let's think about it. Because you're talking about a community where we share so much, we share so much, and then we don't share. We share the cultural experience. We share the expression through our music and our spirituality, right? And our community should be a good place of support that we can rely on, especially here. And I think we need to get back to that, because we actually are lacking in that. But from the perspective of you all growing up, I heard Coach Clyde say, I came from the inner city and basketball was my life. I was about that basketball life, right? But I still didn't get what I needed. Let's talk about that. What does that look like? The intersection of community and the mental health and the raising up of our Black men, our young babies. What does that look like? Where are we at? Don't everybody jump in me at once.
Well, it's all about perspective also. Where are we at in your community? In your community being the word. I think as a whole, we're at a place where we're not allowing our young Black men to stay young Black boys long enough, right? Because they do have to go into the world, and we're preparing them for that, and we're preparing them for what that feels like. And we are trying to instill things in them to let them know how that's going to feel. And so I don't think they get to be young boys long enough. I saw a news story, and they were talking about these young boys, Caucasian boys. They got in trouble in Europe. Those boys were 28, 29, and 30. They were called boys. Whereas our boys can be 15, and they'll say, young man, charge him as an adult. They start treating us as adults too early. So I think that's part of it. And the other is, what does your most immediate community look like? For me, it was a little easier because I was raised with so many women. My mom had 7 sisters. My dad had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sisters. So I grew up with a plethora of women who do communicate and who are talking about their feelings and who are talking about their emotions. And so you do learn to do that when you're in an environment like that. And so for me, talking about what I felt like was never an issue. It was knowing who to talk to and when you could talk to someone. I knew if I could get to the right person, talking is not the problem. But then who can you trust to talk to? I had all those aunts. I couldn't talk to all of them. Do you trust this one? Do you trust that one? Right. So I think trying to lead our young Black males to a place where they can feel comfortable. Let them know that you're available. Let them know that you're accessible. Let them know that you will listen. I think those things are not as in most Black communities are not necessarily there. We don't necessarily see who we can approach, who we can talk to, where we can get that release. Because even though I saw it happening around me, I still had to try to figure out who I could navigate to release the information.
Okay. And with that, like you said, you were fortunate to grow up. Growing up with around all those mothers and aunts, that's nurture. You for the most part, you would think it's nurturing, but even for you to have to figure out who to go to, it leads me to think, and I don't ever assume, just me listening to you, maybe everybody wasn't that safe place that you needed, in the community or within your community, inside the home or in the environment where you grew up. And so I want to ask that question as we're here talking about the community impact. Did you all have safe places growing up as young Black men to be able to address or express or articulate some of the things that were going on with you mentally and emotionally?
Since just to finish what that was, to touch on that, I had safe places, right? Where the figuring out came in is that my safe places started to pass away when I was very young. 1986, I lost an aunt, and I lost a grandmother. I lost an aunt. By the time I hit the 90s, of my 7 aunts, I'd already lost 1, 2, 3, 4 of those aunts. And so out of 11 children, there's only 3 left now, right? And so for me, the finding out who was because my village of my community of the ladies who I would be able to talk to passed so early that then I was left trying to struggle to figure out who, because once that immediate community left, I didn't know who then was safe to speak to. So that's why I had to figure out who, because I lose these people at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. By 12, most of them are gone. So now I'm trying to figure out who to talk to.
Man, that's big too, because when you're talking about who can you talk to, so growing up, like I didn't really feel like I had people to talk to, but I felt like it was the trust and connection wasn't there to where I can just emotionally express. And my mother wasn't that way before she had passed away. My mother was never outspoken about the things that she was going through. She was more stubborn about her feelings and things of that nature until the latter part of her life. And so for me, my outlet to like let things out was always on the football field. So like that was my way of expressing everything that I was going through in those times. Like, you will know if I'm mad, I'm letting it out on the football field, whatever that feeling was. And it wasn't until, that vehicle got taken away from me, which was football, got taken away from me. And I had to pivot to like, okay, now who can be that, or what can be that thing, or who can be that thing that I can lay out as an outlet. And so during that time, my mom passed away. So it's like, dang, I lost that connection. My stepfather who raised me, and him and my mom divorced. So me and his relationship was gone. Football, like I mentioned, was gone. And so I had to figure out, okay, who can I turn to in that time? And luckily for me, like my wife, was that point of contact for me that I can lean on, because she's been with me since I was 17. So I had that person that I can trust. But most importantly, it was like another man that I was able to visibly see, show me what it took. Like he didn't have to tell me, he showed me like what it meant to like walk in the path of being a man and etc. And that guy was my scholarship donor, at the University of Utah. And when I was down and out and needed a place to stay, I remember when everything was gone, like I was able to live with him and his family, and being able to see him maneuver, how he communicates with his family, etc. Right, he showed me through his actions how I'm able to trust him and open up and like, man, what made you be this way, express this thing. And so that trust began because his actions, and that's what allowed me to have a safe space with him. And being able to have a safe space with him showed me the things that I needed to work on and build upon, so that I could be a better person for, like, my wife, my future family, etc. And so I say for me, the person I cling to was a person that I necessarily didn't have to ask. The way that they carried themselves opened the door for me and be like, man, I want to be just like that. And that's what helped me navigate like that space of kind of being open and vulnerable to be that said figure.
Okay. That's good. Thank you for that, Case, guys. So I kind of see like a muscle maintenance going here. James got it, but by the time he was 12, you're on your own. you got we gave you what you this is how it is. It's life now. Now it's like, James, I gotta grow up, and whatever I got, I'm holding on to it because it's gonna take me and catapult me forward. And then Case Scott is like, well, my mom was here, but there was somebody that actually came in and showed me, what I needed to be a better husband, a better father. But then I also hear you saying I took whatever I was feeling out on the football field. And so we know how that is, because we're still talking about the mental health. I could talk, man, that's another segment. We're going to have to do a part 2 of this, because I'm thinking my process, especially with athletes, because we got 2 coaches here, right? The fact that a lot of our young men, think about it, your mental health, and Coach Clyde said it earlier, like, if I got that, okay, you the bomb, you can play basketball or whatever your thing is, right? They're pumping you up because of that, right? But when you lose that, what happens, right? A lot of us, as a lot of young Black men, I'm trying to take myself, a lot of young Black men, right? When they go that route, I'm going to pour myself into my sports, right? Or even maybe my education, right? Because home is so jacked up. I can't speak to anybody, right? We're talking about the impact of community. And when we're talking about, depending on where you were reared and where you were raised, you're talking about a community that, yes, we saw them band together, but what did we see them band together in, right? If we were fortunate and blessed, we do have resilience, right? We know how to be strong. We know how to work. We know how to hustle. Let me just be honest, right? That's one of the things. We know how to hustle. I'm trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. We got all that together. You know what I'm trying to say? But when it comes to other things we face, maybe we didn't get that that good example, because we were exposed to things earlier than we should have been, or depending on your birthing order, if you were the oldest, right? And mom and dad, and we're not, I always say this, please parents, don't get your feelings hurt, because I'll get emails and I'm okay, I'll deal with it. But we're not talking about you because you did what you could, because we're talking about breaking cycles. So whatever we got is coming from whatever you got, right? So this is the whole hope that, okay, let's see what's working, what's not, and what we can do to move forward to break some of this stuff up, right? But if you're talking about the mom and dad that had to work to make sure you had food to eat, then somebody was left in charge, right? And in the pecking of order, stuff didn't always go smoothly, right? Because there was a lot of expectations on you, or because of them working and trying to provide, we just missed that nurturing, or we missed that additional support. We really didn't have that, right? So when I think about that perspective from a mental wellness piece, what do young men do when they are no longer being validated because of their sports skills? You know what I'm trying to say? Or, that person that cheered them on is no longer in their corner, when that generation becomes silent, right? Which I feel like that is a big thing now. We have a what is it, a generation gap going on in the Black community, because those elders that we had, they're gone. And then we that are here now, we're either, how we're dealing with stuff is not very positive. Maybe I should say it like that. So what do we do in that manner when the generation goes silent and you have young Black men that are out here in these streets, so to speak, trying to figure it out, trying to get their mental, their physical, their emotional, their spiritual, all of that together. How do
See,
we?
I don't really look at that as a generation going silent, because
Okay.
the way I look at it
Okay.
is it's a passing of the torch. That generation has laid their ideals and their teachings into you and poured them into you. So even though, I had people in my family pass early, there was so much being poured into me. The way I dealt with stress as a kid was I turned to food. If you look at my pictures, I was a regular little kid till grandma died.
Okay.
Grandma died, and I thought I had killed my grandmother. I used to step on her feet. I knew my grandmother went to the hospital. I assumed as a kid she went in because of her feet.
Okay.
And then she never came out. And so to me, I took that as, hey, this is me. Kill grandma. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm just going to eat this food. But what my family did was support me in such a way as I could be walking around at 10 looking like I'm 5 months pregnant. They'll tell me, boy, you're handsome. You are smart. You are this. You are kind. You're going to be great. You're going to lose that gut. You just a teddy bear. Women like teddy. They one thing my family did do was make sure they're going to pump you up. They're going to support you. I like to tell people, Black women going to do what Black women do, which is support Black men. And so I got that pouring in from them. But what I didn't get was what Mr. The coach, I'm trying to get to his name. I've got so many screens up over here.
Coach Clyde.
Coach Clyde. I never did get that male to turn to. Never did. Until I became an adult and got mentors as an adult. But as a child, 0 through 18, I didn't get that. So as much as I was getting as much as what the women in my family could give me, for my own personal mental health, I still wasn't getting that male aspect, even though they were all around me. These women had husbands. I had some uncles, but I didn't get that part that he got. And for me, it took a long time and some actual therapy and some actual healing and some actual work to find the actual things that I needed to get over those missing links. And so I think in your community, like you said, they can only give you what they can give you, but they're not going silent. They should be passing that information on. So now that they're going, those gems that they've given you, you should be passing on. And the trauma that they've given you, you should be healing from, so you don't pass that
on. Okay. I think that's a good point. And I think sometimes it's easier said than done, because we're talking about us that are on this call now and our age. Think of our age range. Think of who was raised up, and we definitely have gotten the torch passed to us, and we're trying to pass it to others. But it's 5 of us on this call, and we're attached to who we're attached to. But if we're talking about a bigger piece of the pie, somewhere I feel like there's a gap somewhere, right? Maybe. Let me say this. Let me take it back. No, the generations have not gone silent. They're very loud right now, and the manifestation is detrimental. It's not a positive thing. But I do agree that we need to get back to passing the torch. For us that are able to, what are we passing on, right? What is that? What haven't we dealt with as a whole that we need to cut? And of course, I'm talking about from the community perspective now, which is a bigger picture than just the individual mental health issue or the individual traumas that a Black man may face. When I think about community, and I'm gonna put this out here from a perspective of research and counseling, when we talk about community, there are measures that we look at. Where did you grow up? Meaning the area, environment. Were we safe? Because that plays into the factors of your mental health and well-being. Did we grow up safe? Was the neighborhood that I was in safe? Could I walk outside my door and not feel like I had to go run for cover? Like all of those are factors when we're talking about a community, and we're talking about passing the torch and healing trauma. We're dealing with a broken system, but we're also dealing with a mindset. And I'm going to say it just like that, because a lot of us are repeating cycles because we won't change our locations. We won't move. like K Scott and me working in the field of domestic violence and dealing with like different services like housing. I can say one case, we had a case where not just one family, generations have gone through. Like we're on the 5th generation and y'all are still here in the housing program and nobody has, shifted that for my heart, that hurts. But that's a question again, like how do you break something like that? Because now that is so deeply rooted in the
Systemic,
family.
definitely.
Yes. So that's where I'm saying, like, from that perspective, taking into those aspects of community, community can have a negative effect. It can have a positive effect because we know we have growing resilience because of who we are as African Americans. But it can also have a psychological effect, which is what we're talking about today. And more so, we're seeing the psychological disorder from within our communities. And I'm throwing that out there. Y'all agree or not? Are we seeing more positive effect, more negative, or more psychological effect disorders? What do y'all think?
I think it depends on how you look at it. I think if you're looking at it from the aspect of what the media is showing you, I think it's going to say primarily what we're getting back is negative.
Okay.
What I find on a day-to-day as I interact with my circle, my village, my associates, the people in the community, what I see is a generation of folks trying to make that shift,
Okay.
right? Not shying away from therapy, not shying away from talking, trying aspects of intertwining gentle parenting into the type of parenting that we grew up with. I do see that. And I hate to say it that way, but I do see it.
Yeah.
And I
That's
see it
real.
in our communities. I don't see as many kids getting whoopings as they used to. I don't see as many kids being chastised in the same way verbally as it was when we were growing up. If there is a shift in the generations of trying to address that, when I see it in my day to day, do I see that in the media? No. Am I in the trenches? No. Right. So I'm also not in the trenches to know what's happening in that aspect. But what I do see on the professional aspect, and from the regular people who do come see me for their foreclosures and things like that, even when they bring their children, I'm watching how they interact with their children. It's very different. And you can see them trying to be more mindful of their thoughts, more mindful of their concerns, more mindful of what words are coming out of their mouth, knowing that what they speak over their child has an impact. Not parenting from a place of pain all the time.
Yeah.
Which even though we look back at that as love, all that switching and extension cording and all of that is parenting from a place of pain, right? From what they knew. And I do see a shift in that in this generation. So I think it just depends on where you're looking. If I'm looking at my everyday, I would say the shift is happening. If I'm looking at the media, maybe not so much.
I can interject on that. My most recent classroom teaching assignment, I was at an elementary school, and I got the chance to see the generation because I had a gap. I was in the classroom for a number of years at the beginning of my career, and I went to nonprofit. So I came back into the classroom 12 years later. And it's not like riding a bike. First of all, I'll tell you that teaching is not nearly as easy as riding a bike. Riding a bike is way easier. And like getting to see the different generation now, right? Because I do interact with younger people at my job. I still have some mentees, excuse me, that I've known since they were in 9th grade. Now they're young adults, right? But these youngsters, I see 10 and 11-year-olds who are in my classroom when I was teaching in 5th grade. I still saw, like you said, James, the media might portray one thing, but I saw a nice blend of parents, right? Now I'm in an area of Houston, Acres Home, if you're familiar with Houston, and that's like, kind of considered the hood, right? It's like Acres Home. But I did see a lot of healthy parenting. I did see a lot of children who are able to express themselves and not be disrespectful. Now, of course, I saw things you also see, what I'm saying, when you might expect in the hood, right? But I think that shift is there. You do have some parents that are still parenting with the same values, but with different applications of those values.
There we go.
Okay. And so, like, and I even had a conversation with my cousins yesterday, um, day before about, how, getting 5 whoopings from 5 different people for the same thing. You know what I'm saying? I see the laugh. Scott.
That didn't never happen. What are you
Not,
talking
it didn't
about?
happen to me.
We didn't have this. We heard about it.
Right, right. And so I don't think that's healthy no matter what generation you're in, right? That doesn't make any sense. The child understood the first time, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the second time, but come on. And so, but at the same time, I saw a kid in that same class who was his mom and his auntie treated him like their best friend. And so you're going to see that blend no matter what. But I think that there's still an openness to like more insight, like therapy with the newer generation. The younger kids, I guess you call them Gen Z or whatever. I think they're a little bit more open to talking to people about those things and to not seeing some of the patterns of their parents that were broken patterns and not repeating those patterns. Right? They're hesitant to get married. You know, not because they don't necessarily want to be married, but because like, well, I don't want to go through 3 divorces, right? Like I don't want to do that, right? Or I'm not going to go get into more debt, you know what I'm saying? So I'm not going to do that, right? So I've seen some good things, and of course you're going to see it all over the spectrum. But the other spectrum, the other factor we got to think about is like social media and how our children interact right now is way different than how we interact because we didn't have a phone in our hand 24/7. So no matter what we say and do, a lot of students are going to want to go. A lot of people, young people, are going to want to go online and watch videos rather than actually get in person, real hands-on assistance. I talked to a young man today in a coaching session, financial session. He was like, "Man, I don't know if the people in my network will respect this method of presentation. They'd rather go to TikTok or YouTube, right?" And he's 23 years old. I said, "I understand that, but they might go learn some of this information, but they need somebody to actually coach them through it and help apply that stuff." And so I'm glad he was open to talk about it. I don't know if I really fully answered your question. I think it's a yes or no answer, but like I think it's better than we might see in the media. But there's definitely work to do also on the other side of that.
Yeah. And we have about because I'm gonna stick true to my time. I think that the conversation needs a part two. If y'all are up to it, I think this is a good conversation, and we need to bring more people to the table because there are some solutions. There are things that we can do that we can implement. At least for the area where we are, we can't touch everybody. But those that we can touch that are ready for change that want to break some cycles, we definitely can. So I believe our language should change. And I'm saying that I was listening to Michael, you just was talking and you said, you grew up in the hood. And I'm just like, see, that is something, and I got it, but we talk like that. Let's just say it, right? From environmental things or from the world saying what they say or stereotypes and stigmas, right? And I think one way, especially when we talk about mental health as a counselor, one thing I always talk to people about is mindfulness and affirmations, right? And y'all heard me say earlier, you are one of the most important relationships you'll ever have is with yourself. So how you speak also affects your mental health, right? How you see yourself or how you take in how others see you also affects your mental health. So I think also that's a perspective, especially from our Black men. I always say our men matter. We need our men to be the fathers, the brothers, the sons that they're supposed to be and they're capable of being. So we can advocate on one hand for going into the community or going into our families and having panels and discussions like this, one to maybe release and deal with some things together that maybe we're not getting the support, or maybe I feel isolated, whatever those issues are before that we said, okay, well, let's have more of these type of conversations where so many people are in the room or so many people come to the table so you don't feel isolated, because we are trying to think what is the solution that we can put in place for the next generation that is already here now. Let's just be honest, right? And going forward in the years to come, and let's change our language. That's one thing. If we're talking about perspective of childhood, I heard some of you say like I got nurtured on some things, but some things I didn't get the example because there wasn't a man there, right? So how do we give tools? Start with what you speak over yourself, especially with young men. Those that are mentors, those that are advocates. I know in coaches, I know you've had to empower those that you coached. When they're feeling some kind of way, to tell them, hey, give yourself some grace, right? No negative talk, that kind of thing. I think we can start from that perspective as an intervention. And then we do need clinical intervention. You know, the therapy, like you said, we're not maybe where we used to be, and social media may be painting the picture one way. Honestly, this world is going cuckoo. So social media is painting the picture for every race. I'm just saying,
That's true.
everybody is dealing with something every day. There's no way you stay plugged in like this if you don't have a foundation or support. You're gonna need some type of medicine. Something is gonna, because it's ruminating, all day long, right? So you got to make sure that you're sound in order to deal with these things that we deal with daily and that are coming down the pipeline. The last thing I want to get to, because I promised the young women that I would definitely get to this, and like I said, we were going to flow with the conversation. Back earlier when we were talking, I think Coach Clyde was coming out of the abandonment part, and something struck my head about relationships. I don't know if it was something was said about masculinity. I think that's when I wrote it down because I'm gonna make a t-shirt. Isolation causes emotional numbness. K. Scott said that, I believe, right? And that's when I started thinking, like, is that's what's wrong with y'all when y'all get in relationships? Boy, I tell you. Okay, so anyway, it had me think, it had me thinking like that. And so I want to ask you, because all of y'all on here are married, or you have children, or you have been married, and this is for the ladies, y'all. I'm gonna ask these questions because y'all are not on here and you could not come in the room. You had to watch via live stream. Yes. So how does mental illness show up in your relationships? And I'm talking about romantically. Yes, we have relationships we got all kinds of relationships, but this is for the ladies, the young Black women that are trying to figure out. We're trying to help. We're trying to be supportive. We're trying to love on you, but it's hard. We're at a hard spot. How is mental illness showing up in your relationships?
I'll say for me, early on was because going off the emotional numbness for me was me not being there emotionally at times will not be shown as affectionate to my partner, and then therefore she would feel insecure, and that insecurity would drive a whole lot of questions that may be like if I go out with my friends or something like that, then maybe questions would be asked, well, who is that, boom, boom, boom. And a lot of that stuff could cause problems in relationships because it's just one thing after another bouncing off and compiling. And so for me, the more open I began, the more trust I was there and more secure she was being, because if I've been blocking myself off the whole time, then you got to be opening up to somebody, right? And so I think for me, it's just being open and vulnerable. And that's where I began seeing a therapist and stuff years ago, and just trying to figure out, man, what was my root cause to everything? Why did I feel emotionally numb? And yeah, and for me, it was just stubbornness from childhood. I just never had that or felt the need to open up to anybody. And then the only person or thing that I would open up to was football. When that was taken away from me and my mom passed away, I felt like, oh, I don't need nobody else to open up to. So for me, that emotional numbness played a huge part, which kind of compiled into everything else. And then it was when I, stopped that pattern that things got a lot better in that aspect.
Okay.
And now I'm thinking about parenting now, kind of what we were going on earlier. So, as a parent now, I often ask my kids to describe some of the things that they're feeling, right, or going through, so I can know and see in what ways I can best treat. Because I always feel like if I could focus on that trust and connection, then obviously that treatment can come second. But I feel like, man, if my dog, because I got 2 daughters, if they know that I'm there emotionally for them, then they won't have to lean on outside sources to find that secureness. And so for me, I thought that was super important for me to kind of model that behavior for them as they're, growing up.
Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking you have girls too. You have young ladies too. So most definitely.
Yep.
Okay. I hear you, Clyde. I see Clyde is in the chat. Okay. Anybody else want to?
For me, it is where it shows up for me in relationships is back at the vicarious trauma.
Okay.
I spend sometimes so much of my day pouring out, helping other people. By the time I get home, I don't have anything left.
Gotcha.
And so I may not have the time when I walk through the door to then give you anything.
Mm,
I need some moments. I need some time.
okay.
And I recognize that with a new hire that I just made also to try to catch him early. He just got licensed November the 3rd. I was
Okay.
talking to him on the phone. I was giving him an assignment. It was after 5 o'clock, maybe it was 6 p.m. And his daughter came up to him and said, "Daddy, whatever." And he said, "Hey, no, I'm on the phone. I'm working." I said, "Hey, look, it took me many moons to realize that is not the proper response. Let's hang up this phone. You deal with your daughter. Show her your attention. This work is still, it's already after 5. Court's closed. Call me back later. We just tested before 8 o'clock in the morning. You know.
Yeah.
And so, but that's something I wasn't given as a young lawyer. And it's something I had to learn through time. And I will say it had an impact on my relationships. And so I would say that vicarious trauma, getting a good handle on that, creating the boundaries outside of the household so that you have something left when you walk through the door.
Yes. I love that. Y'all heard that. That's good. Somebody write that down. Some man somewhere that's dealing with your significant other. Write that down. You have to be able to pour into them. It makes no sense that you give all of you elsewhere and you come home where it's supposed to be your safe place and it's not safe because of that. That definitely is a nugget learned. Anybody? I have a thought, but I'm holding it. I'm holding it.
For me, so and the question just to reiterate is, how does mental health show up in our relationships?
Mental illness.
Mental illness. So like for me, sometimes I will allow things that I've experienced in my past to come into how I respond to my wife today, and that is not always healthy. And we've gotten really good at recognizing, no, that's me, that's not you. Like my bad, right? And like sometimes I'll be defensive, and like there's not a reason to. Sometimes I'll be anxious. And that's not necessarily a reason to, if that makes sense, And then there's times when it's reversed as well. And so it's funny because she's a therapist by trade. So of course, she's got a little more well-versed, vocabulary and stuff, learning and education and training and such. But it's even turned the other way sometimes where she'll recognize, that's not you, that's me, And so being able to recognize when you're doing things that are affecting your mate and that they haven't really caused. There's a book that comes to mind. I keep recommending books. That's really
right.
Somebody should send me some ducats. But 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. It's an amazing book, John Gottman. And he talks about the 4 horsemen of a relationship that is, hurting and, like maybe on the going the wrong direction. Stonewalling, which is like emotionally blocking yourself off. And that's something that I try not to do that. I don't think I do that, but sometimes I can walk away for a second. Being defensive is one of those as well. Being super critical and scornful is the 3rd one. I can't remember the 4th one. I'd have to go look at notes or what have you. But the point is, like, we have to be aware of our traumas and be aware of the things that will, cause us to go into a place emotionally that we shouldn't, or to isolate from our partner, things like that. And make sure, like to James's point, don't let the outside world affect your internal peace at your house. That's super important.
Indeed. Don't let the outside world affect your eternal peace in your house. I'm repeating that because that is true regardless of you being in a relationship or not. A lot of times as advocates, as mentors, as those in the serving profession that is in the trenches, we are dealing with people and what's going on with them all day long. And so learning how to turn that off and say good enough until the next day, because we got to go home. We got to learn that is something that you learn when you're in the the field of health. So definitely this is no different when we're concerning mental health. One stereotype, kind of mixing this together as we get ready to close with the relationships. I know we're going to have to come back and do a part 2, and I really hope that you all are able to come back, because I think this needs to be explored much more. It's going to take more than just a conversation, but maybe the next time is a conversation in a game plan, however that may work for the communities that we serve. But with Black men, we're talking about relationship wise, because of course men and women are different, but usually we see externalizing behaviors like irritability, we see anger, we see the shutting down, and a lot of times, and I'm saying this because I'm unbiased, right? This is mental health. We're talking about mental wellness. As your significant other, we take that as it's toward us. Number one, that your frustration is with us. Number two, but it's really not that. It's that thing we talked about earlier, where in most of our communities and our upbringing, the men has been raised to be the breadwinner, the strong one, and you are strong. I'm not taking that from you, because you be the man that you're supposed to be. But when we have not learned how to express or articulate, right, or get the support we need for our mental well-being, our emotional support, that's what happens. So we're talking about relationships, and of course I'm talking about romantic relationships, but women tend to think that, wow, this is crazy. Like, I could be by myself, right? And it's really not geared towards the woman. It's just the fact that you're the closest thing to them, right? And you really are their safe place, even though you feel like this is crap right now. Let's just be honest, right? And so that's just something to think about for those that may be dealing with their husbands or their significant others, right? And dealing with mental illness, or just needing a break, needing a moment. So I definitely wanted to say vulnerability for some reason, for the perspective of the Black man. Were y'all taught to be vulnerable? Or do you feel like Michael just shook his head? I ain't got to even finish the question. Were you taught to be vulnerable? Is that something that you even understand now at this age on being vulnerable? Because it's a part of being open, but being vulnerable towards the one that you love, the one that you wake up, to next to every day, all that. Uh-oh. I don't know if I'm freezing.
Oh.
No, you're not freezing. I think
Okay.
I think we're giving you in our silence the answer.
Okay.
Okay. No,
You're
we
right.
were not taught to be vulnerable. Even around all those ladies, I learned to be able to voice what I needed to say, but not to the point of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right? Not to the point of vulnerability. No. I can recall going to a funeral and not wanting to cry. And I went to the car to cry when my aunt had died. And I was in junior high school. And my stepfather was already in the car.
Mm.
And surprised me and said, "What are you doing crying? You can't do anything. It's not going to bring her back. Stop crying."
Mm.
So it's that type of thing.
Yeah, that is a part 2 right there.
Yeah. So no, we're taught to be vulnerable. I know to be open. No one, not to the point of vulnerability.
And I will say I didn't learn it as a child, not directly at least. I had, my father. He's a great dad, always present, provider, protector. We didn't really start talking until I was fully an adult, like grown, like 25, 30.
Yeah.
And like I learned vulnerability though in college. I joined a Christian fraternity, and that's my first experience of true brotherhood, because I never had a brother. I have all sisters, and so I didn't know what it meant to relate to a man my age. I had friends in high school and stuff, of course, that were close to me. And I had a couple of moments of vulnerability, but I didn't truly learn what that looked like and meant until I joined that organization and started to really tap into the resources of being close to men and see other men who actually did know how to be nurturing, did understand what it meant to be vulnerable, did understand how to like cry and it's okay, and to express themselves healthily, right? So it's something that does take practice for a man. I'm absolutely sure of it.
I don't know what I just did, but y'all keep talking. Sorry. The screen just
I
shifted.
see we're shifting, playing music.
I don't know what happened. Okay.
All right.
There we go. I was like, I'm not sure what just happened. Okay, go ahead. I heard you. Sorry, brother.
No, I'm done. I'll let Coach Clyde or K Scott jump in there.
I don't know if y'all can hear me.
We
got
can.
you.
Okay,
Yes, we can hear you now.
I've been having a lot of trouble over here. Um, I think my mama she always told me, speak what's in your heart, what's on your mind, and don't be scared to kind of stand up for yourself in their regard. Um, Vulnerability. I always, kind of spoke what was in my heart all the time. I wasn't scared to, speak what was on my mind, and like I'm always transparent and open. Um, I think sometimes it was a little emotional. I could have controlled my emotions, and I think as I got older, the right men came in my life at the right time to give me the insight that I needed. So it's just like when I worked at this law firm. It was this guy named Greg. He seen something in me, and he just started. Hey, I see something in you. He just started giving me conversation, and it's like everywhere I went, from college, anywhere, it always would be somebody always to give me some nuggets or some gems that I need to help me, go through my journey. So I just think everybody just showed up at the right time, and my mom, she was like real close with me as far as giving me, you know, knowledge on things like that. But I feel like I was just everything just landed in the right place every time when I go on a different journey. So I'm not scared to talk. I tell my wife I love her and stuff. But in the beginning of our relationship, I didn't know how to express it because when you grow up in the inner city, some people always talking about, oh, you look weak by holding a girl hand or open the door for her. And I for me, I like doing that naturally. So I think I got caught up in that mindset when they were saying that. And then when I started to get older, I'm like, man, I'm not finna, I got to be who I am. So I had to reshape my mindset
Yeah.
because you can get programmed. When you leave out your house, you can get programmed. So what they think you should be. And if you don't know who you are, you'll catch yourself doing the same thing and following the sense. But when you start to navigate, you say, nah, well, I isolate myself from that. I'm not going to be like y'all. So I was kind of like an outcast in that regard. But all in all, I, I like expressing myself and speak what's in my heart because that person really know what's on your mind. So, uh, like you said, it goes back to balance again. You gotta know how to balance yourself and stuff like that. So I've been listening because my phone my headset's been acting up. I didn't think y'all could really hear me, but I really enjoyed this tonight from everybody. But like I said, I ain't scared to talk now, so it's just expression. But I'm gonna be quiet now. I've been holding all that in
That's all right. That's all right. We needed that.
because I've been just hearing everybody. I've been trying to say something.
Yes.
And I'm like, they can't hear me, so I'm just gonna just take it all in.
We can hear you now, and we hear you loud and clear. I am going to get ready to close out because we are about 3 minutes over. I do believe that this is a part two, and a part two from the perspective of men and women coming together. This conversation, again, we're talking about the mental health crisis and the state of the Black man. And just when we just finished the subject of relationships and vulnerability, love is a powerful, powerful tool. And then when it's healthy, it should help us mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of that. And so being vulnerable, when we're talking about our Black men who have been taught to be stoic, like James said, stop crying, boy, you can't, that ain't gonna help, all of that stuff, right? That's like a oxymoron, like I just lost somebody that I love and they love me, and you're telling me not to weep, not to grieve, right? Those type of things we definitely want to discuss. And I even think with me and my brother, like we grew up in the same household, so I have a lot of thoughts that I could definitely share, even from the perspective when James said I was nurtured and I had women, but not necessarily vulnerability. I know how to speak my mind without a problem, but vulnerable, I don't like that word. It makes me uncomfortable still to this day at 48, right? I'm the fighter, I'm the protector, and it's hard to turn that off. And I respect men and we need them, but you've got to be a good one on a good day to fool with me, right? So, and it's just because of how we were raised, right? So you have different aspects, and I've had to deal with my healing and my thought process and all of that. So I think this we'll put a pin in this because that relationship, I got a lot of text messages at this point about this particular portion. So we may need to come back on that part and then bring some of our young ladies and our women into the room, right? Because this is not just about our Black men. Yes, it starts with our men, but if we're talking about helping our families and our communities, then we have to go further, right? And what is the solution, and what does that look like? And so, thank you all, as always, for participating, giving us your knowledge and your nuggets and your wisdom. I always say we never have enough time because these discussions are well needed, and they just good. We just go from one point to the next and one extreme to the next. But hopefully that something we said today would resonate with you, would help you. These young men, like I said, I feel like they are fire. They are superheroes to me in the community. And so if you need to reach out, if you want to connect with them, please go to the Songbird and Me. You can email us and we can go from there. But we will have a part 2, so stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you friend us on Facebook because these discussions are well needed. We're getting ready to cross over into a new year. And family is important. We're going to need each other more than ever in the days to come, especially from the perspective of community. So let us work on what we can and do what we can while we can. I'd like to thank again all my guests for being here. I love you all very much, and it's very appreciated. You all have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Keep doing what you're doing, advocating, being that light in a dark place. I know it is appreciated and someone needs you. So y'all take care. Until next time, it's your girl, Stephanie Ray Songbird, signing off from somewhere in Texas. All right. See y'all later.
All right,
All right,
everyone.